So I am honored to be here today to talk about employer engagement. This is a passion of mine. It's my research. It's what I do every day. And so I'm excited to talk to you about some of the things that we've been doing in the States and some of the things that I've learned from talking to businesses, and then giving you an opportunity to talk at your groups and find out what you're doing, what you're learning new, what I can learn from you, because even though people look at me as an expert, I think I have expertise, but I don't know that I'm an expert, but I do know some things. So we're going to talk a little bit about how employers are people too, and the importance of building employer relationships. And I apologize that I don't know Dutch, so I will try and speak slowly, but my passion sometimes gets me excited. So if I start talking too fast, shout out, say something so that I can slow down for you. So here's what we know from the research that I've done at the university and the research that we're doing at Transcend is that job development is more than just job placement. People with disabilities need assistance in getting a job. So job placement is just helping people find a job in the community that's already there. But job development is very different. Job development is about building those employer relationships. And that the best work readiness are services that those people can get a job quickly. That's really what we want to do, is help people with disabilities get jobs as quickly as possible. And those jobs have to be jobs that they choose and they want, jobs that are real jobs, that are paid on the business payroll, not on the payroll of somebody else, and that the jobs might have pre or post support, so people with disabilities might need some supports there. And that we should really look at employment services, so everything we do when we talk to businesses or when we work in our fields is that we have to look at both the supply side, which is the job seeker, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think in our field we do a very good job on the supply side. And then also we have to look at the demand side. And that's what employers want and what employers need. So we have two sides, two groups that we really need to focus on when we're employing people with disabilities, the supply side and the demand side. So 4 things we found out by doing some research, and it's really important for you to think about these things as you're doing your work, is the qualities of an effective employment consultant. That's the term we use for job coaches in our field in Wisconsin and in the States. But these are the 4 things that we found that if you're effective in your job, these are the things that you want to make sure you have. The first one is principled optimism. Principled optimism. We found when we surveyed employment consultants around the country that if you believed that people with disabilities can work, if you truly believed in the bottom of your heart that regardless of the severity of somebody's disability that they could work, then you were more likely to be able to help all people find jobs. The second, and in our country this is really important, and I think it's important across the world, and I'm assuming it's important here, is cultural competence. And it's not just cultural competence in terms of race and ethnicity, but it's also cultural competence understanding the family structure of some of the people that we support. So understanding that maybe their parents aren't in the picture, maybe they're living with their grandparents, maybe their older sister is more important in their life than other people in their life. Understanding the financial disparities within families. That's also cultural. The low socioeconomic impact that some families are in really impacts employment. The fact that somebody with a disability in that family may be the only person who's working and nobody else in that family is working. So that cultural competence is really important. And then the last 2 are what we're going to be talking about mostly today, but this idea of being a business-oriented professional, that we are not social services. We're not looking for charity. We're looking for business partnerships. We're looking for business relationships. We have something to offer the business community. And so how do we build those partnerships in that community? And then finally, networking savvy. So getting out there and meeting people. That's 99% of what we need to do. Getting out there, talking, connecting with people, finding out what people do, finding out what businesses need, and then how we can help make that match. And so we have to move from this idea of I think I can, to I know I can. So when we look at the process of supported employment for individuals with disabilities, there are two things. One is to know the job seeker. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that because it's really important to kind of have a base to understand from which we build that employer relationship. So knowing the job seeker and then knowing the employer. Those two pieces have to come into play if we're going to be successful in supported employment. And then that little area in the middle is where we connect people. So we connect them based on what we know of the job seeker, what their strengths are, what their skills are, what their passion is. And then we find out what the needs of the employer are. But we have to find out what the needs of the employer are. We can't just go in and talk to a business and say, help me out. I've got this person who's really got a significant disability. They're nonverbal. They don't use the bathroom very often and they have poor hygiene. So do you have a job for them? Because most likely an employer is going to say, thank you so much, I'll talk to you later. They're not going to open their doors. So we have to really get to know what the needs of the business are first and then connect those passions and interests. And once we do that, we have to support both. We have to support both the job seeker on the job, but we also have to connect natural supports. We have to facilitate those natural supports. We have to connect coworkers and supervisors so that there is a good connection that they can support that person on the job when we're not there. So I have this quick little activity now, and I'm going to put up a picture, and it's actually a very famous picture. You don't have it in your slides because I didn't want you to cheat. So I'm going to put it up, and I just want you to jot down the first thing you see. Just the first thing you see. Don't sit and analyze it. Just the first thing you see. Oh wait, where did it go? Oh my. Somehow that got out of place. Never mind, we'll do that activity later. What happened there? Yikes. Okay. I won't blame Mario on that one. I just want to quick go through this and see if I can find it, because it's here somewhere. Maybe it's not. All right, it's not up here, so never mind. We won't do this. But anyway, I'll tell you what it is. It's a picture of it's called Vanity. Has anybody ever seen the picture of Vanity? It's a picture of a woman looking in a mirror. And when you look at it, some people see the woman looking in the mirror, but some people see a skull. And so I show that to start thinking about how do we look at things differently? How do we see the woman in the mirror in the picture of Vanity? And how do we also then look at the skull to make sure that we're meeting the needs of both? So if you want to look up the picture, it's called Vanity, and that was supposed to be there. All right, so that to me leads into our traditional way of assessing skills and abilities for people with disabilities, is that we tend to look at that one thing. So if all we see with a person with a disability is the skull, then that's how we approach employment. That's how we approach business relationships, based on what we see, that one thing. But what we need to do is we need to look at everything. We need to look at the skull, we need to look at the picture of the woman in the mirror. And so this is just what I think traditional assessments do when we look at them for people with disabilities. It's a picture of bumblebees, and all of them, they did their assessment and they all say worker bees. And that's what traditional assessments do. Okay, class, here's the career path suggestions based on the personality assessments that you took. Everybody's a worker bee. That's part of our challenge, I think, when it comes to supported employment, is to understand that people with disabilities don't all want to be worker bees. They don't all want to do cleaning. They don't all want to do food service. That they have lots of ideas about what their interests are and what their passions are. And it's up to us to figure out how we build on those passions, because that's how you get success. So we have to get to know our job seeker, and in your packet, there's also something called a positive personal profile, and it's something that we developed that we found to be very successful. And what we basically say is the positive personal profile is hanging out with intent. It's getting to know that person. It's building not the fact that they have a disability, because we already know that. If they're coming to us, we already know that they have a disability. It's really about what are their abilities, what are their passions, what are their interests. So we look at their personality, we look at their preferences, and we look at previous experiences. And many of the individuals that we work with have no previous experiences, which is part of our struggle and part of our challenge. So we can't sell to an employer what we don't know. And so it's so important to develop this positive personal profile. And you have a sample in your packet of what that actually looks like. And the positive personal profile is a growing document. It's not something you do at one point in time and then that's it and you put it away. You actually build on it so that as that person has more and more experiences, you can add to that and then grow their career. So to do that, we need to look at discovering discovery. We need to find out as much as we can about that person. And what we tend to know a lot about is what their disability is, what they can't do, what they're not good at. And what we need to really focus on is their interests, their learning style, their temperament, their skills, their passions. I believe strongly with all my heart that I can teach anybody to do anything as long as they're interested in it. Their passion. What gets them up in the morning? That's the one question I ask somebody. What do you think about when you're not doing anything? What's your passion in life? What do you really enjoy? I worked with a young man, and I'll tell lots of stories throughout this thing. I worked with a young man who had 6 dishwashing positions in a matter of a year. 6 jobs in a matter, no, it was 2 years, over 2 years. So he said he liked it, and we sat down and we said, well, what else would you like to do? And his name was Digby. If you could do anything. And he said, well, you know, really, I think dishwashing, that's pretty much all I know how to do. And I said, well, that's all you think you know how to do, but you've had 6 positions in the last 2 years. So what else could you do? What else would you like to do? If I could help you get any opportunity in the world, what would it be? And he said, well, you know those people who call you at night and ask you lots of questions during dinner time? And at first I didn't know what he was talking about, but what he was talking about is, in our country, we have telemarketers who typically call during dinner time because they know that's when everybody is there. And apparently he lives in a group home, and he was a telemarketer's nightmare because he would grab the phone and he would start asking them questions. So when they started asking questions like, how many boxes of cereal do you eat a week, and what kinds of activities do you do during the week, and what is your exercise routine, he'd start asking them, so how many boxes of cereal do you eat a week, and what kind of exercise routine do you have? And the telemarketers actually ended up hanging up on him. So it was the opposite of what we usually see. So I said, so what he really was telling me is he liked to talk on the phone. So ultimately what we did is we helped him find a position at a marketing research company that helped businesses figure out how they could sell their products to the community. Now, Digby was a non-reader. Digby had cerebral palsy, so his writing skills were very limited. So looking at that, people would say, well, he can't do that kind of position. But what we did is we found out what Digby's passion was. And then we went to an employer and said, what do you need? What are the things, and he said, well, I have high turnover because nobody likes to be hung up on, and it's really difficult, and you know, he's talking to a lot of different people. So we created a position for Digby at a marketing research firm. He memorized the script because he couldn't read it, so he listened to it on tape. And then he memorized the script, and then there were 3 or 4 different scripts, and then we adapted the tool that he used, and so it was a checkbox instead of a handwritten tool. And then everybody got to use that because it was much easier to do a checkbox than it was to do a handwritten tool. And Digby worked there for 15 years. Very different because our focus was on his passion and what he wanted, and then what the needs of the business were, versus trying to fit Digby into a position that he wasn't very good at. So that's what a positive personal profile does. It really gets to know that person, their dreams, their goals, their likes, their dislikes, their passions. What kind of support systems do they have, and how creative can we be? What are the challenges? Because everybody does have challenges, and they do bring some challenges into what we do. But building that positive personal profile so that we can match that business need to the passions and interests of that individual is what we really want to focus on. Because the most valuable assessment strategy is spending time with that job seeker. It's spending time with that person over time. And unfortunately, we don't often get paid to do that, but it's so important to do. And we recently just finished a small study that showed that if we spent more time up front getting to know our job seeker, that person stayed on their job 72% longer than if we just put somebody in a job right away. So knowing that person, spending time with them in the community is so incredibly important. And this is why. Because as I said earlier, many of the folks that we work with don't have job experiences. They've never worked before, or if they have worked before, it's been for a very short period of time. And what I hear a lot, especially in schools, is the individual's not motivated to work. They're just not motivated. And I think what happens is we start with motivation when we really need to start with exposure. If we're really going to help people with disabilities find jobs that meet their needs and the needs of the business community, we have to start with exposure and not with motivation, that this person's only motivated to do this or they're not motivated at all. So we have to start with exposure. The more opportunities and the more experiences that people with disabilities can have in jobs, job shadowing, work experiences, internships in the community, taking tours of businesses, all of those things build that passion. Because if you've never had that experience before, how can you have a passion for it? So then that exposure piece leads to interest. So now that I've been exposed, and now that I see all of the different possibilities that are out there, well, now I can say I'm really, really interested in architecture, or I'm really, really interested in working in the clerical field, or in the retail field. But now I have something to base it on because I've been exposed to it. Then interest will then ultimately lead to motivation. So do you see how that process works? And that's how we need to help our job seekers. We need to give them lots and lots of exposure that will lead to that interest so that we can say, what are you interested in? What is your passion? And they can actually respond to it. Then that interest will lead to motivation, which then we can now develop an action plan. We can develop a plan for job development to help them find a job, to help them lead to a career that they're really interested in. So it's so important to follow this process. And this is part of the business relationship piece, because we have to be selling our individuals' skills and their passions. We have to sell what we know about that person. So I worked with a young man just recently who was on the football team, kind of. He was on the junior varsity football team, and he was not very good. He's a young man with autism, but his brothers, he has 3 brothers, and he wanted to be like his 3 brothers, and they played football. And this is American football, not soccer, so American football. So he was the kicker. And he then started, playing with in all the games, and he would just basically stand on the sideline because he really wasn't very good, but the coach said, we'll have him on just to be there. And so we said to Tad, what do you need to do? He said, I really want to play. I really want to play football. I really want to be out there kicking, but he wasn't very good at it. So he went to the coach and he said, how can I get to play? I'm a senior, how do I get to play? I'm going to graduate this year. And he said, well, you have to work hard. And if you work hard, then maybe you'll be able to play. So Tad would go and work out. It was kind of like Rocky Balboa in the movie Rocky. Like, he went out there and he was lifting weights and he was running every night and he was practicing so hard. And finally, he got to kick in a game. Wonderful story. Wonderful story that we got to know because we hung out with him and we gave him some exposure opportunities and we spent time with Tad. And then he got his first interview at a Walgreens. And one of the questions, as you know, is, why should I hire you? Why is this important? Why should I hire you over somebody else? And based on your experiences, what problem-solving things have you done in your career? Well, he'd never worked before. And so, of course, he looked at my colleague and said, I don't know how to answer that. I've never worked before. And he said, tell him the story about The football. So he told the story about the football, and he said, and so what did you learn from that? Well, I learned that if you work hard, good things will happen. And the employer hired him right then and there. Because if you work hard, good things will happen. And in her mind, that's what I need. I need an employee who wants to work hard because they know good things will happen. But that never would have happened. That opportunity never would have occurred had we really not gotten to know Tad. And hopefully this activity will work. It's probably my fault. So what we need to do is we're very deficit focused in our field. Because our field is based on the medical model. Our field is special education and rehabilitation is based on the medical model. And it's not based on the person-centered model. And what we need to do is change our thought process. Because if we follow the deficit model, what employer is going to want to hire any one of our candidates? So we really have to focus on the assets. So this is turning deficits into assets. Because every bad thing can be turned into a good thing, right? It worked. So here are some of the deficits that I hear about why somebody can't work. Well, they have a short attention span, or they're irresponsible, or they're distractible, or they're hyperactive, explosive, or lazy, or spacey, or obsessive. And so these kinds of terms are in people's reports. And then we look at those and we say, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to find this person a job? Look at all of the negative things that we talk about. So now we need to turn those into assets. So an asset for somebody with a short attention span, maybe they have many interests. And maybe that's not a bad thing because there are jobs out there that can match those deficits with those assets. Somebody who's irresponsible, well, they're carefree, they have free will. And there's opportunities out there for business that match that asset. Distractible, they're perceptive, they pay attention to everything that's going on. Hyperactive, they're energetic. So we need to know that because we don't want them to have a sedentary position where they're just sitting. Explosive, they're dramatic. Lazy, they're a little laid back. Spacey, they're very imaginative. Obsessive, they're focused. So turning those deficits into assets and then asking yourself, where can you find a job that matches those assets? Instead of saying that this person can't get a job or no employer is going to hire somebody, changing that thought process into assets versus deficits is a great way of doing it. So I work with a young man again. His name is Jeremy. Jeremy has a traumatic brain injury, and he uses profanity all the time. And I mean all the time. Like in every sentence there's a profane word. So the first time I met him, I went there and he was putting little red tabs, safety tabs into Rust-Oleum paint cans. Very, very really small stuff. And so it was very difficult for him because with his traumatic brain injury, not only did he use profanity all the time, but he had very poor fine motor skills. So it was really not a good job match. But that's what he was doing in the sheltered workshop because that's the contract that they had. So he was very frustrated and I walked up to him and the guy next to him was putting those little tabs in right and left. And Jeremy was really concentrating on putting those tabs in and he really was frustrated and he said, what the F are you doing here? And I was like, oh my God. And his case manager said, see, we told you, he's not ready for employment, he can't work. And then he started using more swear words at me. And I said, well, I'd like to take him in the community. And the case manager said, are you nuts? Because he swears all the time. He uses profanity all the time. And I said, well, I would just like to see, going back to that exposure, interest, motivation, what could we do with Jeremy? So sure enough, we took him out and he swore to everybody. We took him out to lunch. He swore at the waitress, and he used profanity quite frequently and called me lots of names. And then I found out that he was on a behavior plan to decrease his profanity for 2 years. So my question is, who really has the disability? If he's been on a behavior plan for 2 years to decrease his profanity or eliminate it, and it's not working, then we're doing something wrong. And after I got to know Jeremy a little bit more, I realized that we're never going to change his language. He's always going to use profanity. First of all, if you know anything about traumatic brain injury, you know that a lot of times some of those inappropriate behaviors exacerbate because of their brain injury. And he was I hate to say it, Mario, but he was a motorcycle guy. he was a big, burly Harley motorcycle rider. And I think, quite frankly, that he used profanity before his brain injury. So it's gonna be worse. So of course, we were told that he's not employable. No employer will hire him. So what we did is we went back and we looked at it differently, and we looked at those deficits and assets. And we said, where can you swear on a job? And think about it. There's a lot of places you can swear on a job. And so we listed them on the wall, and we looked at all the places, and we just brainstormed all these places. Some of the places weren't in Milwaukee, so we weren't ever going to get him a job there, but there were some really key places. And one was trucking. Truckers swear all the time, truck drivers. And there was a trucking logistics company a couple miles from his house. So I went and took a tour, and I said to the guy, I want to take a tour of your trucking company, and he said, okay, I'd love to show you. Great. So I go in and I talk to him about what kinds of employees that he has and what he's looking for in employees. Took me on this tour because businesses are really proud of their business. And he loved to show me around. And he said, and guess what? The truckers are here, so you'll get to see what truckers actually do. So you'll see what the job is. And I said, great. So of course we walked around and the truckers were swearing up a storm. And I stopped and I said, do they swear like that all the time on the job? And he said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, he was really embarrassed. I'm so sorry. And I said, no, this is wonderful news. And the employer looked at me like, oh my gosh, okay, the tour's over now and I'll see you later. And I said, no, I have a young man and this is the situation. And I explained Jeremy. And I said, you have a need and Jeremy has a need to get a job. And I think this would be a great opportunity to match the two of you up. And he said, well, we'll give it a try. So we gave it a try. He had an internship over the summer. And within that summer, 3-month period, the employer hired him. And it didn't matter that Jeremy swore, because everybody swore there. And he was able to get a job then. And he's been there ever since. Here's another example. This is what Andrew's file said. Andrew is autistic, he's impulsive, he's aggressive, and this is a picture of Andrew. I couldn't take a picture of Jeremy because he doesn't like getting his picture taken, but Andrew was fine with it. And so again, Andrew was a person that, no, there's not going to be a match for him out there. No business is going to hire him because he's big and he's got aggressive behaviors. But then when we got to get to know Andrew a little bit, these are the things we saw. We found out that, yeah, he's aggressive and he has some issues, but he had a real passion for music, and he played the piano and saxophone that nobody knew that he could do that, and he was quite good at it. He liked gardening, he was good at clerical, he was a very fast typist. He needed a lot of verbal information, but it needed to be presented slowly, so you couldn't bombard him with all the verbal stuff. He liked clean, he liked organization. When I went to his group home, I went into his bedroom and he wanted to show me everything in his bedroom, and he had this great bookcase with all these really great books. And I pulled out one of the books and I said, oh, I have this book, Andrew. And then I put it back on the shelf and he went over there and he like redid it so that it was perfectly aligned, and I had put it in the wrong spot. So really like things that were very, very, very tight. He liked structured, consistent, and he hated to be interrupted. So we went out in the community and we saw what kinds of opportunities are available for Andrew. And again, within his community, we found this really cool little store that sold CDs. And it was kind of a vintage CD store where people who were getting married or people who had special events would go because they had very unique kinds of music. And in the back room, it was a mess. So whenever they would go back to try and find the CDs, nobody could find the right CDs. There was no rhyme or reason. It was dirty. It was dusty. So we matched that need to Andrew. And we said, here's what we see you need. Here's what Andrew could bring to your company. So now he works in the back room, and that back room area with all the CDs, that's Andrew's space. He's organized it, he's alphabetized it, he's kept it clean, he's kept it organized. And then whenever they need a CD, they go to Andrew. They're not allowed to go get the CDs themselves. They go directly to Andrew. So there's a match based on the needs of the business and what Andrew needs. And so what I think happens is that we have these ideas about employers that, you know, our job would be so much better if it wasn't for employers. That's how I used to think. Like, I would love my job if I didn't have to deal with employers. And then I realized that was kind of silly since my job was about helping people find jobs. So I kind of have to deal with employers. But the more I got to meet business, the more I got to meet employers, I realized that they're just people too. They're just like you and me. They have a business to run. They have things that need to happen in order for their business to be successful. And my job is not to sell them a problem. My job is to help them solve their problem. My job is to say, I have something that will help you with your business. Not to go in and say, well, I have this person who uses a wheelchair, and these are all the situations, and I really have to find him a job. Because that's dumping our problem onto the business. What I realized is if I got to know the business, and I spent time with that employer, that they were just like me and they needed a job done. And then I could go back and say, this is what I can do. I can help you with this. So here's one of the myths that I think we have, and I think we've set it up in our heads, that employers are expecting perfect employees. And I'll tell you, as an employer, I do think that's true. I want the perfect employee. I want the best person, and I want that person to do everything that I need them to do. But then I realize that I'm dealing with human beings, and nobody's perfect, and nobody's going to fit perfectly into my business. So I'm going to get as close as I possibly can to finding that perfect employee. So I just want to ask you this question. Have you ever worked with a coworker or a supervisor who has any one of the characteristics, and you can read it in your handout if it's better for you, that had any one of these characteristics? And if you're with one of your coworkers at your table now and they meet one of these criteria, then don't say anything. But take a look. Have you ever worked with somebody who acted inappropriately on the job, who wasn't organized, who didn't communicate very well, who couldn't take criticism, who refused to take public transportation or acted impulsively or got distracted easily, who wasn't very good at their job but still managed to keep their job? I work at the university. That's a big one for professors. So how many people have worked with people like that? Yeah, pretty much all of us should be raising our hands. And yet, these are the reasons that we say people with disabilities can't get jobs. So the reality is that since we all have these, and we all work with people who have some of these issues, then people with disabilities can easily get jobs. And what we have to look at is we have to look at the preferences. Because preferences matter. Getting to know that job seeker matters. Helping them negotiate that employment status matters. So when it comes to preferences, I love Charlie Brown and Linus. So it says, I'd hate to have a job where you had to get up early in the morning. That's what Linus says. He doesn't want to get up early. Charlie Brown says, I'd hate to have a job where you had to stay in the same place all day. And then Lucy, of course, says, I'd hate to have a job where you had to be nice to everybody all the time. And the thing is, there's a job for each one of them out there. We just have to find that match. We have to look at their preferences, look at what their assets are, and then figure out how to make that match for them. So here's what employers want. Now we're going to move into what employers need, because we're good at knowing what our job seekers need, but we just need a little bit of advice on how to make sure we make that match. But identifying their skills, their strengths, their passions is what we really need to do. But now this is what employers have said. Employers say they want relationships. They want true relationships with us. They want to know that they can trust us. And if they trust us and like us, they're more likely to do business with us. So employers want relationships to help them meet their company's needs, but they also want relationships to help them meet their industry's need, because every industry has certain things that they need in terms of requirement. They also want relationships that help perceived community needs. So some businesses, and that's why it's so ironic, because at lunch Mario was talking to me about the cube that he has, about the different types of employers. These are the different types of employers. Some employers are going to want to do this because it's the right thing to do, because it makes them feel good, because socially they want to contribute to their communities. Some employers are going to do this. They're going to hire people with disabilities because they really want to make more money, and if this can help them make more money, then this is what they're going to do. So every employer is different. And so just like we got to know the job seekers, we need to get to know our employers as well. So what employers want to know from us when we're out there developing is they want to know, why does your candidate want to work here? Why is it important for them to work for my business? What is their interest? What is their motivation? That's why knowing your job seeker is so important, so that you can explain that to them. You can say, this person wants to work in your industry because Jeremy wanted to work with truckers because he can swear all the time, he can use profanity. Tad knew that he wanted to work harder, that he wanted to continue to work, and he wanted to grow in a business. He didn't want to just stay in an entry-level position. He wanted to move on. And then they want to know what we can do for their company. So why does our candidate want to work there? But more importantly, what can we do to help their business? Can we help them save time? Can we help them save money? Can we help them improve their efficiency and their productivity? Can we help them improve their customer relations? Those are the top 4 motivators for why employers hire people. To save time, to save money, to increase their productivity or their quality on their job, and to increase their customer relations. That's what businesses want. And businesses will hire anybody, regardless of whether they have a disability or not, if they can do any of those things. Employers are looking for employees who are dependable and responsible. Most important, are they dependable? Will they come to work when I need them to work? And then when they're at work, will they work? Because so many people get hired, and then they, hang out at the water cooler a little too long, they go out on their smoke breaks a little too much, they take a 45-minute lunch break versus a half-hour lunch break, they chat with their colleagues. So that reliability is so important. So dependability and reliability, hugely important for employers. And this is from our research as well. The second thing is availability and flexibility. So are you available to work when I need you to work? This is huge today because we no longer have businesses that are just 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We live in a global economy where businesses need people on weekends. Businesses need people over the holidays. They need people after 5 p.m. They need people before 9 a.m. So are you available and flexible with your time? This is a real big reason why you need to know your job seeker, because this is a question for the employer. Employers will say, well, can you work weekends? The first time that happened and one of my candidates said, no, I can't. And I was like, oh my God. I never prepped him, and I'm kicking him under the table. I'm like, you won't work any weekends? Nope, won't work any weekends. Monday through Friday is when I can work. And I'm like, oh my God. And the employer said, well, I really need somebody who can work weekends. And so he didn't get the job. And that was my aha moment, that I need to prep people. That maybe you don't want to work every weekend, but if an employer asks you, availability and flexibility is critical, then yes, you're going to work weekends, and maybe not every weekend. Maybe you can say, I'll work Saturdays, but I'd like Sunday off, or I would work every other weekend, but you have to be able to respond to that availability. And then the third thing is productivity and quality, but that's the last thing employers are looking for. If an employer can find somebody who's dependable and available, they'll hire that person over somebody who has productivity or quality. They can teach that. That's something that can come with time. But if they know somebody will be there every single day, and that they'll work when that employer needs them to work, that is so important. And we were talking about that at dinner the other night. And I also have a story about that, because I have a gazillion stories, but I have a story, and Luke had several stories at dinner last night. But we live in the snow belt in Wisconsin. And so I was asking if it snows here a lot. Well, in my state, in my country, we could get anywhere from 20 to 30 inches of snow during the wintertime. And sometimes that all happens in 2 days, believe it or not. So one day, it snowed so much. It was blizzard. Everything closed. Our city closed. There was no bus transportation. Our whole city closed. Our city government closed. Everything was closed. And then I realized that my young man who was working downtown, he had no phone, and he was probably going to go to work. And so I tried desperately to get in touch with him, and I couldn't. So I trudged downtown and got my car stuck, and sure enough, he was standing outside the door saying, well, why aren't they open? I mean, I'm here. What's going on? I said, the city's closed. You needed to watch the news. And so he made it down, despite the fact that, and he would have normally taken the bus, but he walked and made it down to that business. That's what employers are looking for, that kind of passion to make sure that they're on their job. What employers often get is appeals to hire people with disabilities. Please hire people with disabilities. It'll make you feel good. It's good for the society. It's good for whatever reason. And that's not why employers will hire somebody. The employers really have to hire somebody to meet the needs of their business. Another thing employers get is a discussion of programs. So if you don't remember anything that I say today, get this one message, and that is, we don't have programs. We have services. We are an organization, you are an organization that provides a service to an employer. Once you start talking about programs, employers fear. Oh my gosh, if I get involved in this program, I'm going to be stuck, and I'm not going to be able to get out of it. So most employers will say to you, especially the big box stores, we don't work with programs. So, but if you say you're a service, and that you're there to provide a service to that business, you're more likely to open up the door for that employer to develop a relationship with you. And then services are varied from organization to organization. And again, I'm so glad to hear that you're looking at consistency, you're looking at some quality standards that really show that employers will get the same thing whether they hire me or they hire Luke or they hire Mario. They're going to get the same service, the same type of service, the same quality of service. And then ultimately, confusion and frustration, because they don't really understand the rehab world. They don't understand the education world. They understand business. And so we need to move over into the business arena so we can understand business and help them connect with us, because they're not going to come to us, but we can go to them. So employers, it's really a mixed bag. Many employers that I've spoken with, big box stores, small businesses, all say the same thing, and that is that they would hire people with disabilities. But what they struggle with is us, the people who are there to help people with disabilities find jobs. And so it's kind of like the saying, we have met the enemy and he is us. Because what an employer sees that first time is not the candidate with the disability. They see us. And if they can't make a connection and they can't develop a relationship with us, then they never move to that next level to meet our candidates who happen to have disabilities. So we have to have this marketing idea, this marketing approach to employment for people with disabilities. And I'm just going to read this to you because I think this is real important. And marketing is so important. And I know that people who get into this field say, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a marketing person, but you are. You are. And you are no matter what field you're in. But it's more effective to find out what customers need, and in this instance, what they need and want, and match it to what you have to offer, than to get them to buy what you're selling. Now think about that. It's more effective to find out what customers need and want, and then match it to what you have to offer, than it is to get them to buy what you're selling. If you think about it in your own lives, that's how we all buy things. It's all about features and benefits. And what we're really good at doing is identifying the features of our program. Here's what we have to offer you, Mr. or Miss Employer. And many times we miss the mark because we don't get to know the employer. We don't understand what their needs are. We make an assumption about what we think their needs are, but we really don't get to know what their needs are. So we need to kind of flip things and understand that employers are not going to hire our candidates if we go in and just focus on, here's what we have. This is a real example when I first started in this field. And I went to a business and I happened to read in the newspaper that small businesses were having a hard time maintaining employees. They were having high turnover. High turnover is death for employers. They need people who can stay so that they learn the business and can produce. And so I went into this small business and my first line was, I can help you with your turnover. And the employer looked at me and said, my average tenure for employees here is 20 years. I don't have any turnover. I was like, okay, thanks then. I mean, I didn't do my research and I was trying to sell what I thought I had to offer, but it had nothing to do with what that business needed. So business needs are so important, and getting to know the business is so important. And this idea of features versus benefits is critical, and we are not very good at it in our field. So a feature describes our service or our product. It gives a description, which is great, but it doesn't help us understand the benefits. And nobody buys features. Everybody buys benefits, no matter what you're buying. You yourselves do not buy features, you buy benefits. So here's an example. Toothpaste, all of the ads on TV, you have a whiter smile, and toothpaste has a stain removing formula. That's a feature. It's a stain removing formula, great. I'm not gonna buy it for that, because I don't really care. But the benefit is that I'm gonna get whiter teeth. And if you really expand that benefit, you're going to get the girl or guy that you've been aiming for, right? Because now you got whiter teeth and a bigger smile. So, feature, great, but nobody buys toothpaste for that. We buy it for other reasons. Anti-lock brakes. I mean, when I went and bought my car, the car salesman said, great, you have anti-lock brakes. And I was like, good, because I have no idea what that means or what that... But the benefit is consumer safety, and in Wisconsin, when I have 25 inches of snow, I need anti-lock brakes. So features versus benefits, we have to change that over. So once you have this, once you've developed your features and benefits, then you move into what we call in the States the elevator speech, only here it's called the lift. So the lift speech. You have to have that good opening line. You have to have that line that says to an employer, tell me more. Tell me more. I want to hear more about what it is that you do and how you can help me. And the idea is that it's quick, it's less than a minute, which is really, really quick, that you have to give enough information to that employer so that they say, oh wait, give me your card and I want to call you. I want to know more about what it is that you do. So it's from the time that you get on that elevator and you see that person to the time you get off the floor or they get off the floor. And these are the elevator speech essentials. So first is that it needs to be not a huge long conversation. Again, 60 seconds left. It's your advertisement. It's your advertisement for who you are and what you do. And so it's really quick. It can lead into a two-way conversation, but really it's more of, here's who I am. And so a successful pitch relaxes that person, so it's not a sale. I'm not trying to sell you something in the elevator. It's just that I'm piquing your interest so that you want more information from me. The second, that it's short. It's not a sales pitch. It's not a sales pitch, it's really short. And that you should use everyday language, and this is really, really important, because every field has their own language, including rehabilitation. So we use jargon that an employer may not understand. And once you start using that jargon and an employer doesn't understand it, they're not going to ask you for clarification. They're just going to say, okay. So everyday language, avoid words like synergy or optimize or efficiency because that sounds too salesy. And then, look for signs that that person is waiting and, trying to get off the elevator. So keep it short, make it just a 1 minute or less conversation, and that you use everyday language. So I have an example, and I want you to critique this example, and you have it in your handouts. Hi, my name is Diva, and I work for Rehabilitation Incorporated. We're a supported employment agency and help individuals with disabilities obtain meaningful and productive employment in the community. I was wondering if you have any job openings. What do you think about that? How many people like it? Okay. How many people don't like it? How many people are like, I could take it or leave it? All right. So for those of you who don't like it, why not? Yes. Way too much information. Like, what's too much? Pick it apart. Okay, it's just too much, the whole thing. Right, they're not going to understand what you're aiming at for a couple of reasons, right? So one is, what did we say about jargon? No jargon. And what employer really knows supported employment? That's a term only in our field, right? What else? Did you have a comment?
Yes, too complex, too many, the thing you said.
Too much, yeah. So a couple things. So you're absolutely right. So it could be okay, maybe, but I say it needs a lot of work. So I'm with the people who say, not so good. So one is, and sometimes we can't avoid this, but Rehabilitation Incorporated. So the name of her organization screams disability. Sometimes we can't help that because the names of our organizations just are what they are. In that instance, don't say the name of your organization. Just say my name is, and this is what I do, right? The second is supported employment agency. So I don't know what that means as an employer, and it sounds pretty ominous, and I don't think it's something I want to know more about. And then an elevator speech, and people will say to me, then you're just sort of lying to that employer. No, I need that opening line so that employer will talk to me and open the doors. I never talk about people with disabilities the first time I meet somebody, because you don't know what that person knows about people with disabilities. I learned this the hard way when I talked to an employer 20 years ago, and I said, I work with people with disabilities. He goes, oh no, I'm never going to hire somebody. No. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, well, can I ask why? Did you have a bad experience? He goes, I had a cousin who had Down syndrome. He was so mean to me growing up, I will never hire somebody. So I was like, oh my God. So you don't know their experiences, so you have to be really careful. That doesn't mean you never say you work with people with disabilities, but that elevator speech, that's where you want to grab them. You want them to open up the door, and later on you can talk about people with disabilities. So in your opening line, that you want to stay away from that. And then, meaningful and productive employment in the community. So my husband, who's not in the field, always laughs at me because he says, you always talk about supported employment and competitive employment and employment in the community. He said, you know, when people ask me what I do, I don't say I'm competitively employed in the community. I say I have a job. And so when we start saying that terminology, you're absolutely right, meaningful, productive employment in the community, an employer's thinking, well, I don't get it. Like, why is that any different? And then the final thing is, do you have any job openings? That is the kiss of death opening line. Because once you've said all this other stuff, what do you think the response is going to be for that? No. Right? No. You don't, in your opening line elevator speech, you don't want to know if they have any job openings. You want to know about their business. You want to open up that door to develop that relationship. So you don't want to even talk about employment opportunities at that point. So yes, so there's lots of issues with that one. So what about this one? Hello, my name is Diva, and my company provides area businesses with employee recruitment and retention support. Much of our success comes from learning about the hiring needs and expectations of business. Would you have time next week to schedule 20 or 30 minutes so that I can talk to you more about your company? How many people like this one? How many people don't like this one? How many people are about it? Okay, so for people who like it, why do you like it? Yes?
It's less begging.
Good, less begging.
And more like, I have something for you.
I have, right, so this one kind of shouts out, I have something to offer you. I'm not trying to beg you to do something, I just want some information. Yes?
It's giving opportunities to the employers and also making connections to get a bond.
Good, making a connection to get a bond, exactly. Making that connection, here's what our success is about, and would we have time? Would you have time to talk about something? 20 minutes, yes? Yes, excellent, showing the interest in the company. So we help and recruit and retain, but it comes from learning about your needs. So I want to know about your needs. I want to just hear about your business. And then again, normally what I would say instead of would you have time, because would you have time could lead to no, I don't. So instead of saying would you have time, I would say I'd like to schedule time in the next couple of weeks. So giving them kind of an opportunity to say no, but really saying, I'd really like to have time to take a tour of your company, or I'd like to come by and see what you do, or meet with you, or whatever the case may be. So does that make sense? Do you see the difference between the two? So one really focuses on that employer and what you really want to get across. The other one focuses more on the disability and what our organization is about. All right, so here you go. I want you to create your own elevator speech. So the back table had a really, really good discussion. And so some of you might struggle with some of the things that we're talking about today, because the young woman in the back was saying that we're modest and we don't sell, and that we got in this field because we wanted to help people and not because we wanted to be salespeople. You're spot on. You're spot on. Exactly. That's how I felt for years, until I realized that if I'm really going to help people with disabilities find jobs, I have got to put my feelings aside and then get into that business world and that business mindset. And it's a struggle, and it's really kind of moving your mind into a different thought process. So you're right. I mean, we're in this to help people with disabilities, but the only way to help people with disabilities is for us to move into that business approach to working with businesses. And I get it. I'm not a salesperson myself, but I've learned that my job is to offer, to assist employers. And then they also talked about the whole free idea that, you know, we have free services for you. And so sometimes for employers that turns them off because free means it's not worth anything. So what we've kind of changed, and again, a lot of what I'm talking about is just semantics. It's just changing the words that we use. So instead of saying something's free, say that there's no cost, that the cost is paid by somebody else. So there's no cost to you. Our services are paid for by somebody else. No cost versus free is very different in the minds of an employer. So when something's free, people are like, oh, it's not worth it. But if there's no cost and it's being paid for by somebody else, oh, okay, so there is a cost, I just don't have to pay for it. Okay, I can do that. So I get it, you might be a little uncomfortable and that's okay, but I hope that you leave here thinking differently about, you know, what you do and how we can move forward with really looking at the business approach. So, having said that, would anybody like to share the elevator speech that you came up with at the table? Just one. I'll just ask for one. You want to try? Thank you. That's even better. Thank you.
I'm Owens and I work for Job Center. We have more than 20 years experience in placing people in a job and keeping them in the there. Last year we met for more than 400 employees. We met something. I want to look at your company and search for things we can mean for you. Would you have 20 minutes next week for me?
So perfect. Okay, so and everybody probably didn't hear that. Would you mind saying it again in the microphone? Oh, sorry. I didn't think of it. I'm so sorry. Yes, do it in Dutch now.
I'm Owens and I work for Job Center. Als jobcentrum hebben we meer dan 20 jaar ervaring in het werk stellen en aan het werk houden van mensen. Vorig jaar betekenden we bij 400 werkgevers iets op de werkvloer. Mag ik samen met u een keer even uitzoeken of dat we dus ook iets kunnen betekenen voor u? Geeft u daarvoor 20 minuutjes volgende week?
That was actually really good. My only comment with that would be to start with, we've worked with over 300 businesses in this community, and what we've done for those businesses is we've assisted them in finding qualified job seekers. And so I would like that opportunity to meet with you so that we can find ways to meet your needs. Just a little bit of tweaking on that, but otherwise it was awesome. You did a really good job. So hopefully, then thank you. So hopefully you kind of can see how you really want to put that emphasis on the business first. Okay, here's what I've done with other businesses, or here's what we will do with your business, and that the goal is I want to know more about your business. And so these are just some additional things, making it easy for an employer to say yes. I work with job seekers interested in your particular industry. So maybe you're looking at a particular industry, and I'd like to set up a time to talk with you about the skill set that's needed so that I can better prepare our job seekers. Another one would be, I'm really interested in whatever your industry name is, and I'd like to visit and learn more about your company and that field. One would be a good time. I'm not a fan of when would be a good time, for the reason is they all say never. So I always say, I'd like to meet with you in the next 2 weeks or the 3 weeks. I'd like to find out more about your business firsthand. When can I schedule a time to meet with you to tour your company? So those are some opportunities. And then the last thing I want to talk about is networking. Because remember those 4 qualities of employment consultants. This was one of those qualities. Networking is huge. The hidden job market is where our candidates are more likely to find jobs. 80% of jobs are found in the hidden job market. By the time they hit the streets, and are on Career Builder or Monster.com or hit the newspapers or the internet, everybody without a disability is going to be applying for those jobs. And so the likelihood of our candidates being offered a position when that position is already being advertised is not very high. And in addition, that networking is so important because those are really the best jobs that are out there. The best jobs that are out there are those networkers. So in my small little business, we have 12 employees. Of the 12 employees, only 2 people responded to a want ad. The others all heard from people that we were looking for somebody, and that's how they got employed. So even in bad economic times, networking is really the way to do it. So there is a great book by Joe Girard, How to Sell Anything to Anybody. And I know sales isn't a good word in Flemish, I know that. But that is what we're doing. We're making those connections with businesses. And so he was the top selling used car salesman in the 70s when we were going through a recession. And here's how he did it, is he networked. He networked with people that he knew. So immediate relatives and distant relatives. Close friends and casual acquaintances. People who did business with him, people who he did business with, all of the people in your network. And what he said is there will be 250 people that you know who will come to your wedding and or your funeral. That everybody knows about 250 people. That is what's called your personal sphere of influence. And that's where you begin your networking. We're not going to do this activity because this activity takes a really long time. But what I've done in the past is we've had people network within their table. So I would identify a job, a very obscure job. Like I just had a candidate who wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic. That was his career goal. That's what he told me he wanted to do. Now, many people would say to him, that's not realistic. You're not gonna, you're a young man with an intellectual disability and autism, and no, you're not gonna be taking photographs for National Geographic. But instead, what we did is we started thinking about, okay, who do we know in our vast networks? I pulled out my iPhone and I looked at all the people I know. Well, I know the director of the Zoological Society in Milwaukee, and I have a friend who's a photographer. And so we started listing, and all of a sudden, between all of us, we had over 100 people who could help him build his career if ultimately that's what he might want to do. It was the power of networking to really think about. So we started having him work at the zoo, seeing all the animals, and then we hooked him up with my friend who's a photographer, and so he started taking photos at the zoo while he was working at the zoo. And then all of a sudden, the people who saw his photography, and they started putting it in the advertisements for the zoo. And now he is sort of their internal photographer. Now, it's not the National Geographic, but it's darn close. And it met all the needs that he wanted, and it met the needs of the business. So it's really about developing those relationships. It's really about getting to know businesses and spending time and researching what those businesses need and what opportunities they have. Joining and participating in business clubs, chambers of commerce, organizations that businesses belong to, because businesses are not going to come to us. We have to go to them. Learning the jargon of business, so not using our terminology, but using the jargon of business, and spending time with employers. Going to business after hours. In our country, we're very big on business after hours, which is drinking and eating cheese and crackers. Drinking, yeah, we do that. And so my staff love it when I say there's a business after hours from 6 to 8 p.m., go there. And then their charge is to bring their business cards and to go out there and to talk with businesses. And they have to bring back at least 2 employers that they're going to cultivate a relationship with. Maintaining your relationships, so always following up. So if I meet an employer at a business event, the first thing I do is I write a thank you card saying, thanks, it was really nice getting to meet you. I'm going to be contacting you in the next couple of weeks so that I can take a tour of your business, or that I can maybe meet with you a little bit. Create an awareness about your services and about disabilities. And then not forcing job seekers into those, I call them job stuffing, where I just say, oh, I met this employer and they have this particular need, and so let's find anybody who can fit into that need. So not just forcing those issues, but really cultivating those relationships. And using social media. A lot of our candidates have private Facebook pages that we then upload, you know, various kinds of things like letters of recommendation, or if they did an internship, we've got reviews and evaluations. We've videotaped people and had them on their private Facebook page so that we can tell an employer, here's the URL link to go to that private Facebook page, and you can see. Using Instagram, taking pictures, having a YouTube page so that you can upload some of the information. Using Twitter. We tweet out a lot. We tweet out and the other businesses see those tweets. So-and-so just got promoted at XYZ company. Congratulations to XYZ business because they just hired somebody. So tweeting and getting out there in LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those social media really impacts what we do. And then making sure you have your own toolbox, like having actual things that you can give to an employer, brochures or fact sheets or statistics from your company. So your elevator speech of, you know, we've worked with over 400 businesses or over 300, those facts are really important to businesses to know that you have experience. Testimonials or references, so we have lots of little terms or little testimonials from businesses that we include on our website and on our video stuff. Business cards, introduction letters, follow-up letters, all of that stuff is really important. But just like with your elevator speech, really important to look at what you give to an employer. So this is a business card. This was a real business card. It says Life by Design, and it has a little rainbow and a little paintbrush. And then it says employment services. So when you look at just the term Life by Design Incorporated and the little rainbow, what do you think? Doesn't it kind of scream social services and help and oh, it's beautiful and what a wonderful day kind of thing? So what we did is we looked at this and she said, I'm having a lot of trouble. I give my business card to people and they think I'm a painter. They think that I like design rooms. They think that I create things. And I said, let's look at your business name, Life by Design, which is a creative name for social service, but for a business, not so much. And then your logo is a rainbow with paintbrush. I mean, yes, that's what an employer is going to think. So we have to think a little differently about what images we portray on our business cards and our logos. So as much as we like some of the things that we have, like, you know, birds flying in the background or little people holding hands or, you know, the wheelchair person, that to an employer does not scream business. It does not scream, I can help your business. And so again, thinking a little differently, so she recreated her business card. She still has her business name, but it's on the bottom in the corner, so it's still there. But she renamed her service Employment Connections. So now if I look at that, it's just very simple. It's just got 2 bars, Employment Connections. Now as an employer, I might look at that a little differently versus thinking that that person's a painter of some sort. Having some sort of sell sheet, something you can leave behind. It's what an employer calls a leave behind. So this is maybe a subtle way of being able to sell your service. So here's what our mission is. Here's who we are. Why would you want to work with our organization? Here are the benefits to building a relationship. And here's our risk-free service that we offer. So one page, very simple, that you can just leave with that employer, or you can have to give to that employer after you've met with them, is a really good way to keep that door open and maintain those relationships. This is actually straight from business. This is a friend of mine who actually sold me my house, and every month I get something from him. Something. Like this, we have lots of festivals in Milwaukee, so this was the festival calendar. And this, on the right-hand side, is actually a magnet that lists all of the different festivals that are going on in Milwaukee. So I put that up on my refrigerator, and I see Greg's face every single day. So when a friend of mine says, you know, I want to go buy a house, I'm like, oh, I just got ice cream out of my freezer, and Greg's face saw me. So yes, Greg, you can contact Greg. But he always sends me something. He sends me birthday cards. You know, hey, just in case you need anybody. So his name is always in the forefront of everything that I do. It's just another great leave behind. Because the thing is, you have to get your face in the place. You have to get in and you have to talk to businesses. And conducting informational interviews is a way to develop those relationships. Another tool that you have is the informational interview checklist with a list of questions and all the different questions that we've used. There's two types. One is just to get information about that industry or about that particular business. And then the second informational interview is to get advice or suggestions. What other employers are interested in what you're doing? What other industries might have high turnover or might have a need for us? So there are just different ways to explore particular businesses or industries to build confidence in employer meetings. So the back table where they were saying they're a little uncomfortable with this, this is a great way of doing this with your job seeker. I've actually gone out with my job seekers and we've conducted informational interviews together. So we just talk to the employers. So tell me a little bit about your business. What do you look for in an employee? When was the last time you hired somebody? Why did you get into this industry? So you get to start building information and relationships. So when you develop the informational interview, you look at potential task lists. So you get the employer thinking differently about what they're doing in their business. So what are the employer needs? This is your way of thinking and connecting the employer needs with the job seeker skills. Again, use terminology that an employer is going to understand, and then find out who you're meeting with. Who are important people that you're meeting with that can help you build this? When you're developing the task list, you want to take a tour, you want to get the recent job descriptions, and why that's important is because we are all supported employees and we all have customized jobs. Every employer has job descriptions, and I want to ask you, how many people in here have job descriptions? If you're sitting next to your boss, you probably want to raise your hand. So everybody has job descriptions, right? How many people in here know what their job descriptions say? Okay, so a few. How many people who raise their hands who know what their job descriptions say do everything on their job description equally well? And that's because she's laughing, and it's because we have customized jobs. So employers, remember we go back to that original discussion about employers wanting the perfect employee. Well, this is part of it. Employers want the perfect employee, but they know they won't get it. That's why they have a probationary period. It's an employer's discovery period. It's an employer's way of figuring out if if Didier fits and meets my conditions for employment. Does he fit into my work culture? Can he do the things on my job description that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. that we'll be able to keep him on board. It's my way. And then after my probationary period, I will sit down with him and I'll say, yes, congratulations, you're a full-time employee. Or I might say, this isn't working out so well. I'm sorry, you might want to find another career. That's what employers do. But let's say I hire him, but I notice during that probationary period that he does certain things on the job description really well that other people don't do very well. Now, his job description still has everything and then also has that wonderful quote at the end that says, and other duties as assigned. But I'm looking at him for this one particular piece. I've now just customized his job for him. It doesn't matter that he had a disability or not. I know he's really good at this. So employers often customize jobs for people regardless of whether they have disabilities. They do it during that probationary period. So looking at those job descriptions is really important so you can kind of parse some things out. So be on the lookout for these kinds of things, and these are opportunities for us to customize employment opportunities. So are there areas where employees are doing things that aren't really that essential, but they have to be done? Are there degrees of flexibility in the workplace? Are there seasonal fluctuations? Do they have a high need during the holidays or during the summer months? So are there seasonal things? Are there unhappy customers that you're noticing? The best job development that I've done is when I go into retail stores and I notice that there are long lines for me to check out, or I notice that the place is a mess and I can't find any of my size. So I go to that employer and I talk to them about what we might be able to do to help them. And then always thinking about that value proposition. Now this does not translate well in Belgian, I'm sure, Dutch, but it's WIFM, what's in it for me? And that's what employers are thinking of. What's in it for me? So that's the question you want. Is it going to increase workforce effectiveness and efficiency? Is what I'm proposing to you going to help my business be more efficient? Is it going to fill gaps in the workplace, things that need to get done but just aren't getting done? Is what I'm going to propose to you helping with that? Is it going to reduce costly temporary workers or increase customer satisfaction? Oops. And then in one of your handouts is the sample networking questions, just things to think about what you can ask to an employer. Do they pay a lot of overtime? Are there tasks that could be done more efficiently or effectively? What's the biggest challenge that their business has today? And then this is my favorite shortcut question. This is the question that always gets a response. What needs to get done in your business that's not getting done? And often employers will say, oh my gosh, yes, there's so much in my business that needs to get done, but it's not getting done. Let's talk about that. Then your next steps are to look at, is this a dead end? So I've met with this employer, I've taken the tour, I've talked with them, I'm trying to develop the relationship. It's just not working. So is this just dead end? Am I not getting anywhere? And if that's the case, you still want to maintain that connection. So maybe once a quarter, you reach out to that employer and talk to them about their business and has their business needs changed. Is there some interest? And if that's the case, then you offer, can I come in for a tour? Can I come in and talk to other people? Can I do an informational interview more in depth? Or are there real possibilities? And then I'm going to set up opportunities for my job seeker to come in with me next time so I can see if there's a good match. We talked about this already. And these are the 7 steps to negotiating employment, because everybody likes lists, everybody likes the numbers. So here are your 7 steps. You're going to recap your meeting. You're going to thank that employer and say, here's what we did, and thank you for meeting with me, and here's what we found out. You're going to present what you saw. During my informational interview, here's what I saw. During my tour, here's what I saw. And this is how we might be able to work together. I think we could make your business more efficient by outline how your candidate can help the business. So given what I saw, this is how I think I've got 2 people in mind who are really good at, and this is what I think we can do. Present them as benefits and what your role is. So here's what we'll do. We've already pre-screened and qualified these 2 candidates for you. And that's really important for employers. And so this is what we'll do next, is we'll bring them in for an interview. And then if you hire one of them, or both, then we'll come in and we will work alongside your non-disabled coworkers and supervisors to teach them how to work with people with disabilities. And then make the ask. Move on, what's the next step? So here's a real-life example. This is Ivan. And so this was Ivan's positive personal profile. We did a person-centered planning meeting where Ivan brought his entire family, his friends. I think there were 12 people at his person-centered planning meeting. And we talked with him, we talked with his family, people who knew him, his friends who knew him way better than anybody else. His teacher, he was a recent graduate from high school. And these are all the things that we found out. That he loved all sports. And in Wisconsin, we're huge sports fans, and these are all Wisconsin sports fans. He loved football, basketball, baseball, hockey, everything. He's easy to work with. He was happy. He was full of potential. He was sweet. He was a great spirit. He was a good listener, hard worker, funny, friendly, joking. He was just a great young man. And then we toured one of the universities in our area that was really close to where Ivan lived. And they had 5 full-size university is a very, it's a private university. It's very prestigious and elite. And they have lots of alumni who use the recreation center. And the floors on the basketball court, especially in the wintertime, were filthy because people would just come in and they'd traipse through, wouldn't take off their street shoes, and the floors were a mess. And the janitors hated cleaning all the floors. And believe me, when you have alumni who make lots of money and donate lots of money to your university, you want to make sure they're happy. So they were getting all kinds of complaints from their alumni saying, you know, we come here during our lunchtime and we want to, you know, have this time to play basketball and it's a mess. And so the janitorial staff was constantly having to clean and was their least favorite task to do. So they clearly had a need. So we went in, we did an informational interview. We found all this stuff out. We compared what we found out with Ivan's positive personal profile, and we set up a working interview because Ivan has a significant disability, and to sit down and interview was not going to be possible. So we set up a working interview for him. We presented the employment proposal, and then we negotiated the terms of his employment. So we looked at the key things from Ivan's positive personal profile, that he loved sports, and he especially liked Marquette because 2 of his siblings went to Marquette. He's persistent, he's a hard worker, funny, and easy to work with. Those were key things that we found that would be a good match for this job. And then the task list was that to clean the courts during high peak time, adapting the wet mop that they used so that Ivan could drag it behind his wheelchair, and then pick up extra basketballs as needed. And so Ivan is now known as the human Zamboni, and a Zamboni, if you're not familiar with hockey, which I wasn't at the time, is the big ice machine that cleans the ice after hockey games or during hockey games. And so what Ivan does is we attached this contraption to the back of his wheelchair, and he goes up and down the courts and he cleans the courts during every single day, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day. And I think the best part for Ivan is that he gets to ask these big basketball players to please get off the court so he can go and clean the courts. But his job, that's what he does. And now, because he's made so many connections on the job, and Marquette loves him and sees the need for having him there, is he also is a scorekeeper for the intramural basketball that they do. So my final tips for you, top 10 employer relationship tips. 1 is to always involve the job seeker, whenever you can, whenever it's appropriate, but always involve them in the process. Oftentimes they can sell themselves better than you can sell them. So you prep them and help them, but they can come in and do an informational interview with you. The 9th is always develop your features and benefits and always focus on the needs of the business for this. What are the features that we can offer you and what are the benefits? Develop the features and benefits for your services and then 1 for your candidate. So you have that asset and deficit list, and then you have the features and benefits for your services, not your program. Identify your networks. Identify your personal networks, and not just yours, but your neighbors and your candidates. They all have people in their network that you can go to. Join and participate in business groups, because businesses are not going to come to us. We have to go to them. So get to know them. Go to business groups and events, even if it's just a matter of you being there and hearing what employers are saying. And for those people who are rather shy, then go there, have your glass of wine, and talk to people. Glasses of wine often open people up a little bit, and they're a little more likely to talk, right? The 5th is to develop a good elevator speech, and then practice your elevator speech on anybody who will listen. When I first developed my elevator speech, my husband was so sick of it that he could probably tell me what I said, but I wanted him to tell me from a different perspective. Does this make sense? Does this, like, would you want to talk to me more? And of course my husband said, no, I wouldn't want to talk to you more, but give it to people so that they can give you feedback. Involve the business before you actually need a job. So your job is about developing those relationships first so that you can then go back to a business and say, I have a candidate who I think will be perfect for your business. But develop that relationship before you need that job. So remember that elevator speech. You don't want to say, do you have job openings now? Because that's not what you're wanting right now. You're wanting to develop that relationship. Conduct those informational interviews with employers. Number 2 is really, really important. When I did a recent focus group with a group of employers, the one thing they said that set people apart from anybody else was sending handwritten thank you notes. Handwritten thank you notes are like the simplest thing to do, but it's a lost art. In fact, I asked the employers, so would an email thank you suffice? And they said, absolutely not. We get bombarded with emails every day, and to send an email thank you, that's fine. That's good, because at least you sent a thank you. But if you send a handwritten thank you note, and this is again a marketing tool. So if you have a handwritten thank you note with the logo of your company on the cover of the thank you note, and it says thank you on it, now that person sees your business again. And then inside they see a simple message, handwritten, saying thank you so much for the tour. Or it was really nice to meet with you last week at this Business After Hours event. But sending that handwritten thank you note is so, so important. It will set you up from everybody else that employer has met with. And then my first and number 1 top 10 list is to never give up. Is to be the mouse, think creatively, wear the helmet, get the cheese, but don't give up, because employer relationships are so important, and what we do is so important to help the business community.